Your partner's career finally takes off. Everyone expects you to feel relieved. But sitting in that meeting, staring at your phone, the first thing you feel isn't relief. It's something you don't want to name. The notification comes on a Tuesday. You're sitting in a work meeting you stopped caring about 20 minutes ago, watching someone redraw a flowchart that didn't need to be redrawn, when your phone buzzes against the table. You flip it over. It's a text from your partner. "I got it. Full-time offer, $94,000. I'm shaking." You read it twice, and then you feel something you didn't expect. Not joy, not relief, not the clean exhale of a finish line finally crossed. Something quieter, something with more edges. You type back, "That's amazing. I'm so proud of you." And you mean it, you do. But your thumb hovers over the send button for just a second longer than it should. You hit send. You put the phone down. You look back at the flowchart. That night over dinner, your partner talks about the offer the way people talk when their whole body has been holding its breath for 14 months and finally gets to let go. The salary, the team, the title, the benefits package, the Slack message from the hiring manager that said, "We think you're exactly what we've been looking for." You listen, you ask the right questions, you refill their glass. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet and inconvenient thought begins to form. When did someone last say that about me? Later, you're standing at the kitchen sink. Your partner has gone to call their mother. You can hear the laughter from the other room. You do the math without meaning to. $94,000 plus your $78,000. That's $172,000 between the two of you. Real breathing room, the kind of number that was supposed to make everything easier. But that's not the math your mind is running. It's the other calculation, the one you've been postponing for 14 months. What did this cost you? Not in dollars. You know the dollar number. You watched it leave. In something harder to name. In the projects you didn't push for, the conversations you kept careful, the version of yourself you put on hold so the household could stay steady. And now the ground is shifting. Your partner's income will surpass yours within a year, maybe sooner. The dynamic you built your routine around, the one where you were the axis everything else rotated around, is quietly, permanently changing. The question isn't whether you're happy for them. You are. The question is what you do with everything you've been carrying, and whether you say it out loud. What would you do? You decide to say it. Not all of it. Not with a plan. Not with the careful, measured delivery of someone who has been thinking about this for weeks, even though you have been thinking about it for weeks. You say it the way it has actually been living inside you. On a Friday night, 2 weeks after the offer, after one glass of wine more than usual, when your partner makes a small offhand comment about finally being able to contribute properly, a phrase they meant as relief, you understand that. Something in you stops being careful. You've been contributing, just not financially. Your partner looks at you. "I've been covering everything for over a year," you say, "and I'm glad I could, but I need you to actually understand what that was." The conversation that follows is not a fight exactly. It's something more uncomfortable than a fight. It's the first time you've said the true version out loud, and the true version is messier than either of you were prepared for tonight. You talk about the savings, the $12,000 you watched quietly disappear, the promotion conversation you avoided having with your manager because you couldn't risk any workplace disruption while the household depended entirely on your stability. The way you stopped mentioning your own stress because theirs always felt more urgent. Your partner listens. Then they say something that lands harder than they intended. "Why didn't you tell me any of this before?" It's a fair question. It's also the question that reframes everything, because the honest answer is you didn't want to add pressure. You wanted to be the person who could handle it. You made a private decision to carry it alone, and now you're holding them accountable for a weight they didn't fully know you were holding. That's not a clean accusation. That's a shared architecture you both built. The conversation ends without a resolution. Your partner sleeps on their side of the bed facing away. You stare at the ceiling. Over the following 6 weeks, something shifts, not catastrophically, but measurably. Your partner starts being quieter around you, more careful. They begin checking in more than before. Are you okay? Do you need anything? But it feels less like intimacy and more like monitoring, like they're waiting for another fracture. You notice yourself resenting the check-ins. You wanted to be heard. Instead, you've been made into something fragile. At work, the release of finally saying it out loud does something unexpected. You start advocating for yourself more. You have the promotion conversation you'd been avoiding. Your manager listens, seems genuinely interested, and says they'll revisit it during the next review cycle. It's not a yes, but it's the first move you've made for yourself in over a year. 6 months later, the relationship is stabilized, but it's stabilized into something more cautious than before, more negotiated. The easy shorthand you used to have requires a little more effort now. Whether that's honesty doing its slow work or a hairline fracture neither of you has named yet, you're not entirely sure. Quick pause in the story. If you like these kinds of stories about life decisions and consequences, you might actually enjoy this channel. You can subscribe if you want to see more like this. All right, back to the story. You decide to let it settle. That's what you tell yourself anyway. Not suppression, not avoidance, just patience, maturity. The recognition that your partner just crossed the finish line that took everything out of them, and that whatever you're feeling has waited 14 months and can wait a little longer. You are, after all, good at waiting. The first month feels genuinely fine. Your partner starts their new role and comes home lit up in a way you haven't seen in a long time. They talk about their team, their projects, the particular satisfaction of being paid well to do something they actually chose. You find their energy contagious. Some evenings, it almost feels like the early version of the two of you. Curious, forward-leaning, making plans over dinner instead of managing logistics. The financial pressure begins to ease. Your partner sets up a direct deposit contribution to the joint account without being asked. The savings number starts moving in the right direction for the first time in over a year. On paper, this is exactly what you waited for. But paper has a way of being more convincing than real life. Around week 6, you notice something small. Your partner has started having work calls in the evening. Nothing excessive, maybe 2 or 3 a week, but they run long, and during them your partner becomes a version of themselves you're still getting to know. Confident in a new register, fluent in a language their new career gave them. You sit on the other side of the apartment and feel something you don't have a clean name for. Not jealousy, exactly. More like the quiet vertigo of realizing someone you love has been growing in a direction you couldn't fully see while you were busy keeping the lights on. You don't say anything, because what would you say? Things are good. The finances are recovering. Your partner is happy. You were the reason they had the runway to get here. That's true, and it's also doing nothing for the feeling. By month 3, a pattern has quietly installed itself. Your partner's world has expanded, new colleagues, a work social calendar, professional momentum that creates its own gravity. Your world has stayed largely the same. Same job, same team, same commute, same ceiling you've been staring at for 2 years. The imbalance has simply reversed. That's all. Except that's not quite all. Because here is what no one tells you about being the stable one. Stability is only invisible when everything depends on it. The moment it stops being necessary, it stops being seen. You haven't changed, but the frame around you has. And in the new frame, your steadiness reads less like strength and more like stagnation, at least through the lens you started applying to yourself late at night. Your partner isn't doing anything wrong. They're not neglecting you. They're just living the life the two of you built together. But you're starting to wonder if you remembered to build anything for yourself inside it. A year passes. The relationship is warm, functional, loving even. But there is a version of you that got deferred somewhere around month 2 of carrying everything alone, and you realize slowly that no one is coming to undefer it. That part was always going to be your job. You just forgot to schedule it.
You decide to do something that feels almost selfish, which is exactly why you know it's probably necessary. 3 weeks after your partner's offer comes through, you book a Saturday morning for yourself. No errands, no catching up on the work email you've been ignoring. You sit with a notebook, actual paper, which you haven't used in years, and you do an accounting that has nothing to do with money. What did you put down during those 14 months? You write it out, not as a grievance, as an inventory. The promotion conversation you kept postponing, the side project you had a real idea for and never started, the gym habit that dissolved when your schedule compressed, the friendships you maintained at surface level because you didn't have the bandwidth for depth, the quiet ambient feeling of being needed that you mistook for a while for being fulfilled. It takes about 40 minutes. The list is longer than you expected. You don't show your partner the list, but that weekend you tell them something true without turning it into a confrontation. You tell them that you're proud of what they built and that you're glad you could hold things steady while they built it, and that now you need to use some of that same energy on yourself for a while. You tell them you're going to start being less available in some of the small ways you've been endlessly available, not as punishment, not as withdrawal, but because you have things to rebuild. Your partner is quiet for a moment. Then they say, "I didn't realize how much you'd been running on empty." You say, "I didn't either for a while." It's not a dramatic conversation. There's no catharsis. But something real was handed between the two of you, and you both felt it. The following months are uncomfortable in ways you didn't fully anticipate. You start pursuing the promotion conversation at work. Your manager is receptive, but honest. The timeline is 6 to 9 months, and there's no guarantee. You decide to pursue it anyway. The uncertainty is frustrating. You were hoping for a faster return on the decision to finally advocate for yourself. You also start a project you've been mentally drafting for 2 years. It's slow. Some weekends you sit down to work on it and produce almost nothing. The rustiness is real. There are evenings where your partner comes home energized from a job they love, and you come home from a job you're trying to remember how to want. And the gap between those two states is uncomfortable to sit across from. You sit across from it anyway. By month 4, something has quietly changed. Not in a cinematic way, not in a way anyone outside your apartment would notice. But you have stopped organizing your identity around what the household needs and started asking with increasing seriousness what you need. That's a smaller shift than it sounds. It's also a larger shift than it sounds. The promotion comes through at month 7, modest, a title change, and $11,000. Not the transformation you might have imagined, but it's the first thing in 2 years that happened because you pushed for it, rather than because the situation required it. Your partner celebrates it with you, genuinely, and you let them. Which, you realize, is newer than it should be. You'd gotten so used to being the one who holds things up that being held, even briefly, even partially, felt like something you had to relearn how to accept. The project isn't finished. The gym habit is inconsistent. Some of the friendships are still surface level. But you are no longer a person running on deferred maintenance. You are a person, imperfectly, in progress. That's not a resolution, but it's a different kind of foundation than the one you were standing on before. 3 paths. 3 different ways of responding to the same quiet crisis. And here is what's worth sitting with. None of them were wrong, exactly. In the first path, you said the true thing at the wrong time in the rawest possible form, and the relationship absorbed it, but not without cost. You got honesty. You paid for it with ease. And the version of you that finally spoke up also had to reckon with the fact that you had been a participant in your own silence. In the second path, you said nothing, kept the peace, and watched the peace quietly hollow out from the inside. The relationship stayed intact, so did the distance you never named. You remained reliable. You also remained, in some important way, invisible to yourself. In the third path, you turned the moment outward into action, not perfectly, not without friction, but with intention. You didn't blow anything up, you didn't swallow anything whole. You made a slower, harder choice that had no guaranteed return. But here is the thing all three paths share. The moment your partner's career took off was never really about your partner's career. It was a mirror. It arrived and asked you a question you had been too busy, too needed, too carefully stable to ask yourself. Who are you when you are no longer the one holding everything together? That question doesn't have a clean answer. It has a direction. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that doesn't show up on any financial statement. It accumulates in the years you spend being the axis of someone else's becoming, not because you were forced to, not because you resented it, but because you were capable of it, and capable felt like enough of a reason. And then, one Tuesday, a text arrives, and the weight you'd normalized suddenly has no structural purpose, and you are left standing in a kitchen you kept, holding a life you maintained, wondering when you last made a decision that was purely, unambiguously for you. The ripple from that moment will spread regardless of what you choose. The only real variable is whether you are conscious while it moves. Because here is what no one tells you about sacrifice. It doesn't expire when the reason for it ends. You have to decide actively to put it down. And then you have to figure out what your hands are for.
Every choice creates a ripple, some small, some life-changing. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to Cause and Ripple for more stories about life, decisions, and consequences. And I'll see you in the next story.